Welcome to what I can only describe as somewhat of a ramble, an edited ramble, of the process of making my latest map called Staplehurst, which used a bit of a different process than ones I've used in the past and thought might be useful for other people to see. A few weeks back, I was watching SAS Rogue Heroes, a great series chronicling the SAS and some of their raids in North Africa and some other topics, obviously. But they had a scene where they were going through strip destroying German and Italian fighter planes on various airstrips. And it got me thinking, would it be cool to make a map around an airstrip? I've never done that before. So when I started doing that, I started looking at possible places for inspiration. And that's where I found this from the American Archive. This is a picture of Staplehurst airfield in the UK from 1944. This is quite a large photo, covering a huge area. You can see the amount of fields and even the size of the airstrip. Ton of details on here that are kind of tricky to see or completely blown out in the imagery, but it gave me an idea of shape, and I wonder what would happen if I just fed this into AI and asked it to colorize it. And so I took a bit of it. I kind of chose the size of this based on the width of the runway being roughly what I could imagine. I sort of kept it as whatever size I could think of for a 512 by 512 size. Gave it to AI and it produced this. The ChatGPT responded with this, which you'll notice has a bunch of problems with it. But it's also done a lot of good. So it's got some weird paths in here, a lot of these kind of things I don't think existed on the original, and it just kind of looks kind of noisy in certain places. You've also got the conundrum of, if you're taking this and making it into a map, you've got the top down of the trees with the shadows of said trees in this image. So there was going to be a lot of work to convert this into a map from this, but it seemed better than nothing. So from this starting point, I used my trusty 512 by 512 image of grey, which just so happens to be this grey for being 10 blocks tall. And I did an import into Goxel as a height map and colour map, and it produced just sort of a flat layer of terrain with the image on it. This is my earliest save I've got of the project, and you can see already by now a lot of the hedging is gone. I've removed it from the colour map. And the way I did that was taking something like this and using the clone stamp tool in paint.net. So I would just control click to anchor it, and let's say I wanted to remove this hedge in between, I would just, in fact, let's move the hardness a little bit, maybe reduce the opacity a little bit, and I would just re-anchor, move it along, re-anchor, move it along, re-anchor, move it along, re-anchor, and so on and so forth, just removing those bits of hedging until it was no longer there. Because those hedges I was obviously going to transfer into being actual hedges, which I did on a new layer using regular brushes. And the height of the terrain was something I did before this step, where obviously I had a completely flat 10 high image of this. All I needed to do was just scribble on top of it on that same terrain layer, I should say. On this same terrain layer, I could then import color map and use that same image, and it would just replace these block colors with the colors from the color map, which was very handy. It meant as time went on, I could just make very quick and easy edits on the map, whilst the color map was still the source of truth for the visuals. So, Goxel for the heights, and using paint.net to control the visuals of just the terrain layer. The rest of the layers were all manual. So over time, this became more like this. You notice how I've added in the hangers. Again, watched SAS Road Heroes and I wanted hangers in this particular map. And eventually it turned into this, where all the hedges are now gone. A lot of the paths that were kind of thin and spindly like these from the original became thicker, and I kind of borrowed this field's texture for the paths between a lot of them. Like the paths and the roads are almost entirely the texture from this one particular field, which I thought was quite funny. But you can see how it's got all the underlying details, but none of the details on top. And what you end up with as you go through this process is eventually building up terrain to be more and more natural. I eventually added things like this, where sort of the road was slightly deeper and indented into the terrain a little bit, and I could do that right at the end of the map building process because it's all on this one layer. As soon as I update the terrain in this layer, it doesn't matter what I do to it, I can just slap the colours back on and it looks good. But you can see how the slightly muted forests came into being. It's like those early forests which looked like this became much more like this, and that was just, again, using a low opacity clone brush just to soften the edges and soften some of the texturing on there, blur the texturing a little bit, because it was just a bit too harsh to begin with. And yeah, more and more details later, and you end up with a full map. And it was quite a short process compared to what this would have taken to do from scratch. Like making the height map, color map from scratch for something like this would have taken a lot more planning, to say the least. And it's kind of nice that it's based on something real. Obviously AI hallucinated some of it, and the reference photos weren't completely clear, but I think you'll agree it's turned out pretty good. And the last few touches, just to mention, just to go to show not only the craftsmanship of Influx for his various map objects, like the tankers, the trucks, he made the top of the AA gun bit here and these searchlights and whatnot, but he also came up with some amazing suggestions for fields where this was originally fully like this, where you had crops going all the way along, and he's like, that would be a nightmare to walk on, which it would. So change them from being like that to being like this, where there's actually paths through. The same thing happened in various places. I think there's one over here where there's a path through here now. And there's one other, oh yeah, over here. So you can sort of get through the middle of there or diagonally across in a nice way. But that's why being in the Voxel Cartography Discord is a great thing to do. Because when you're making a map, it's so easy to get your head stuck in the ways you're doing things, and getting an outside opinion is really, really helpful, especially one as experienced as Influx. So yeah, that is Staplehurst, using a bit of a different way of doing it. I'll probably keep going with this and seeing whether there's any more interesting photographs that take my fancy, and see if I can convert them like this one. Took, I'm not sure how many hours exactly, under a day, maybe between 12 and 24 hours, I'm not exactly sure, but certainly a lot less than it would have been otherwise. So yeah, if you have any questions, visit us in the Discord and ask them, or in the comments of the YouTube video, and otherwise I'll see you in the next video.